Trash belongs outside. My 16-year-old nephew Tyler mouthed the words across the living room, making sure I could read his lips while the adults pretended not to notice. My 9-year-old son, Mason, was standing right next to me, close enough to see, close enough to understand. Around the room, my family members exchanged knowing smirks, the kind that said they agreed, but wouldn't say it out loud. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, took Mason's hand, and walked out the door. What my family didn't realize was that their monthly lifestyle was about to follow us out. Before I tell you what happened when the bank transfers stopped, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? And when you hear how my family treated us, tell me honestly, would you have stayed silent for as long as I did? My name is Celeste. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years being my family's ATM while being treated like their garbage. Let me explain how we got here. I grew up the middle child of 3 in a working-class family in Toledo, Ohio. My older brother, Derek, was the golden boy. My younger sister, Whitney, was the baby princess. I was the afterthought, the one who was expected to work harder to earn the attention the other 2 received naturally. So I worked harder. I got scholarships they didn't. I built a career they couldn't. And when I was 29, I married a man named Julian who came from modest means, but had an idea that would change everything. Julian was a software developer with a vision for healthcare technology. He built an app that connected rural patients with specialists through telemedicine, years before the pandemic made that mainstream. We poured everything into his company. Our savings, our weekends, our hopes. It paid off. A major healthcare corporation acquired his company 4 years ago. The payout was substantial. Not billionaire money, but enough to never worry again. Enough to invest well and watch it grow. Enough to change not just our lives, but potentially our entire family's trajectory. That was my first mistake. I told them. The reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of celebration, I got suspicion. Instead of pride, I got resentment. My mother started making comments about how some people just get lucky. Derek told everyone I'd probably exaggerated the amount. Whitney asked if Julian had cheated someone to get ahead because regular people don't make that kind of money honestly. But they didn't let their resentment stop them from asking for help. Within months, I was funding everything. Mom's mortgage payments after Dad passed, $3,000 a month. Derek's truck loan that he couldn't afford, $600 a month. Whitney's credit card debt that she swore she'd pay back, $15,000 up front. Tyler's private school tuition because public school wasn't good enough for Derek's son, another $20,000 a year. I set up automatic transfers because I was tired of the constant requests. Every month, like clockwork, I sent money to accounts that should have been grateful, but instead grew more entitled with every deposit. And how did they repay me? With jokes about how I'd married money instead of earning it. With comments about how Julian must make all the decisions since I was just a housewife now. With excluding Mason from activities his cousins did, because we probably wanted fancier things anyway. Julian saw what was happening. He begged me to stop the payments, to stop enabling people who clearly despised us. But I kept hoping, kept believing that family meant something, kept thinking that if I just showed them enough love, enough generosity, they'd eventually see me as more than a checkbook. Mason saw it too. My sweet, quiet boy who asked me once why his cousins didn't like him. Why Grandma always seemed annoyed when we visited. Why Uncle Derek called Daddy the lucky one, in a voice that didn't sound happy. Some people don't know how to be grateful, I told him. It's not your fault or ours. It's something broken in them. I should have stopped the money right then. But I didn't. The breaking point came at Mom's birthday dinner last month. Everyone gathered at her house, the house I paid the mortgage on. Derek brought Tyler and his wife, Shauna. Whitney brought her boyfriend of the month. Mason and I came with a gift that had taken weeks to find. A vintage brooch that matched one Mom had lost years ago. She barely looked at it. Oh, that's nice. Then she set it aside and spent 20 minutes gushing over the scented candle Whitney had grabbed from a discount store. I swallowed it, like I always did. Dinner was uncomfortable. Mason was seated at the kids' table with his cousins, but they ignored him completely. Tyler, who was 16 and should have known better, kept making comments just loud enough for Mason to hear. Some people don't belong here. This family was better before. Dad says they think they're better than us now. Mason came to me with tears in his eyes. Mommy, Tyler keeps saying mean things. I looked at Derek. He'd heard. He just shrugged and went back to his beer. I looked at my mother. She'd heard too. She said nothing. Then, as we were getting ready to leave, it happened. Tyler positioned himself where I could see him clearly, looked right at me and Mason, and mouthed the words with exaggerated clarity. Trash belongs outside. Around the room, I saw the smirks. Derek's slight nod of approval. Whitney's hand covering her laugh. My mother's deliberate turn away, pretending she hadn't seen. My son was watching. My son, who had done nothing wrong except be born to a mother this family had decided to despise. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I simply nodded at Tyler, acknowledging that I'd received the message loud and clear. Then I took Mason's hand. Let's go home, sweetheart. We left quietly. No scene. No drama. Just a mother protecting her child from people who should have loved him. In the car, Mason asked, "Why does Tyler hate us?" "He doesn't hate you, baby. He just doesn't understand some things yet." I paused. "But we won't be going back there for a while." "Good," Mason said quietly. "I don't like how they make you sad, Mommy." That night, I logged into my banking app and canceled every automatic transfer. 5 years of monthly payments, gone with a few taps of my finger. The next morning, I got a text from my mother. The first of the month. Right on schedule. "Monthly transfer today?" No hello. "No, thanks for coming to my birthday." No acknowledgement of what Tyler had done. Just a reminder that the payment was due. I typed back 3 words. Not my concern. The chaos began within 24 hours. Mom called first, confused. The mortgage payment bounced. Did something happen with the bank? I canceled the transfers. Silence. Then, "What do you mean canceled?" "I mean I'm no longer paying your mortgage. Or Derek's truck. Or Tyler's tuition. Or anything else. You can't do that. I depend on that money." "Then maybe you should have depended on treating my son like a human being." My voice was calm, years of practice at controlling my emotions around this family. "Your grandson stood in your house and heard your other grandson call him trash. You saw it. You said nothing. So now I'm saying something. We're done. That's not fair." "Fair? I've paid your mortgage for 5 years. Over $180,000. And you couldn't defend my 9-year-old from being called garbage in your living room." I hung up. Derek called next, already angry. "What the hell, Celeste? Tyler's school is demanding payment. They're threatening to unenroll him. Sounds like a problem for his parents. We can't afford that school without your help. Then send him to public school. Like the trash he thinks we are." I let that land. "Your son mouthed those words to my face, Derek. While my child watched. And you smirked. You approved. So you can figure out his tuition yourself. He's a kid. He didn't mean. Kids learn what they're taught. And you taught him that we're less than. Congratulations. Now you get to pay for his education without help from the trash." Whitney didn't call. She texted a long rambling message about how I was overreacting and holding grudges and punishing everyone for one teenager's mistake. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say to someone who still owed me $15,000 and had never once said thank you. The Real explosion came 3 days later when everyone realized this wasn't temporary. Mom's mortgage was 30 days from default. Derek couldn't cover his truck payment and the tuition simultaneously. Whitney's credit cards were maxed again, and she had no one to bail her out. The comfortable life they'd built on my generosity was collapsing, and they had no idea how to survive without it. They tried everything. My mother attempted guilt, crying about how she'd lose Dad's house. Derek tried intimidation, showing up at my door demanding I fix this. Whitney tried manipulation, suddenly remembering every nice thing she'd ever done for me in 38 years, a list that took about 45 seconds to complete. None of it worked. "You made your choice," I told each of them. "Every month for 5 years, you cashed checks from someone you called lucky, undeserving, less than. You let your children treat my child like garbage. You watched it happen and you laughed." I shook my head. "I was never your family. I was your funding source. And now that source is closed." The final conversation was with Tyler. Not by my choice. He showed up at my house 2 weeks later, sent by Derek to apologize in hopes of restoring the tuition payments. He stood on my porch, 16 years old and clearly rehearsed. "Aunt Celeste, I'm sorry for what I said. It was wrong. Can we move past this?" "Do you know why it was wrong, Tyler?" He blinked. The script hadn't prepared him for questions. "Because it hurt your feelings? Because you looked at a 9-year-old child, your own cousin, and told him he was trash? Because you've been treating him like garbage for years while I paid for your school? Because you learned from your parents that being cruel to family is acceptable as long as that family keeps writing checks. I kept my voice level. I don't believe you're sorry, Tyler. I believe you're inconvenienced. There's a difference. Dad said if I apologized. Your dad was wrong. An apology doesn't undo years of cruelty. And it definitely doesn't undo watching my son cry because his cousin called him trash. I stepped back. Go home, Tyler. Tell your father the ATM is permanently closed. That was 2 months ago. Mom sold Dad's house to avoid foreclosure. She's renting an apartment now, smaller, but manageable on her retirement income. She calls occasionally, conversations that are awkward but slowly becoming less hostile. She's starting to understand, I think, that she chose wrong. Derek and Shauna pulled Tyler from private school. He's in public school now, adjusting, learning that the world doesn't revolve around his comfort. Derek had to sell the truck and get something practical. He hasn't spoken to me since. Whitney is on her own financially for the first time in her life. It's not pretty, but she's surviving. Maybe she'll grow from it. Maybe she won't. Mason asks about his cousins sometimes. I tell him the truth, age appropriately. That sometimes families need time apart. That people who hurt you aren't owed your presence. That being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. He's thriving. Without the weight of their disapproval, without the constant reminders that he wasn't wanted, he's become more confident, more joyful, more himself. That's worth more than any family gathering. If you're watching this and you've ever been the family ATM while being the family punching bag, I want you to know something. Your money doesn't buy their love. It never did. It just bought their tolerance, and that's not the same thing. When they call you trash while cashing your checks, believe them. They're telling you exactly who they are. And when you're ready to stop funding your own disrespect, the cancel button is right there. Use it. If this story spoke to you, drop a comment below. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.